There are some conversations that we must make comfortable in every household and society as a whole. There are also moving stories of perseverance and purpose that not only uplift others, but inspire us all to think and reach higher in hopes of positively affecting someone else. Throughout my journey, I've been fortunate enough to have been a part of some amazing conversations and witnessing wonderful stories of transformation, including my very own. And now I share them with you. Your stories, your narratives, our inspiration. I'm Cory George, and this is One on One. May is National Mental Health Awareness Month, and according to Henry Health, untreated mental health disorders and unmanaged stress are silent killers of black men. Adult blacks are 20% more likely to experience serious mental health problems compared to the general population, and a much smaller percentage of black men utilized mental health services in the last year. There is a new app simply called Henry, specifically tailored to the needs of black men, that hopes to help address some of these roadblocks and barriers to mental health treatment. Here to discuss this innovative app are its developer and founder of Henry Health, Kevin Dedner, along with Chief Clinical Officer and Licensed Professional Counselor, Dr. Rufus Spann. And so thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm excited to have you on because as I spoke to you guys offset, you were on my wish list of topics as well, and
Nice.
and I've done the research on you guys for the last, I want to say 3 or 4 months.
Nice.
So the first thing I want to ask you, Kevin, what was the catalyst for you to create this app?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us and
Yes.
for the opportunity to share a little bit more about Henry
Yes.
Health. The founder of Henry Health, Henry was born for me out of a place of like personal pain, I would say. About 5 years ago, I started to think a lot about the stress associated with being a black man. In fact, it was the George Zimmerman verdict that triggered a headache that led me to start doing a lot of research.
Yeah.
And what I found in my research is that, as you said, unmanaged stress and untreated mental health issues are at the root cause of the low life expectancy of black men. Within a few months of coming to that understanding, I fell into a period of depression myself and actually saw 3 therapists before I actually was able to find a therapist that I felt really understood me and was able to get my life back on track. And I thought I would go back to building my consulting practice when my co-founder reached out to me and asked if we would be interested in doing something in digital health. Dr. Spann was the therapist who helped me get my life back on track. So I went back and tapped him, and that's how Henry Health was born.
So I wanted to add this in because although we all don't seek mental health, we all have a smartphone. And that's the great thing about this app is that it's a utility that's convenient.
Right.
And when I saw it, I was blown away because I had never seen this before. Because usually when you go on a website to look for a therapist, you have all these check marks as to, the qualifications or maybe the gender, the language, or any other, or even as far down as what school they went to.
Yeah.
But you don't see a checkbox for are you culturally competent for the patient that you may have.
Right.
And that's a very important thing because I believe that each culture has its own set of, I guess, dynamics
Very true.
that really speaks to the level and type of treatment that they need. And so I want to ask you, Dr. Spann, how important is it for someone seeking help to feel comfortable with their potential therapist, and why do you think that it's harder for black men to find a level of comfort much easier than, let's say, a white male?
Thank you for asking that, Cory. If we just get to the base on what therapists find to be very helpful in sessions, is the rapport. So rapport is that friendship, that connection, that alliance that can happen in our sessions. So I feel that black men may not feel the same level of rapport and connection with their therapist. That could be due to cultural barriers, that could be due to not feeling connected to their actual therapist. But what we're looking at Henry Health is creating that alliance, creating that connection, and creating this moment that's collaborative. And I think what we're finding is that with therapists that go through their training, that go through their institutions, and then finally get into their actual practice, they lose some of that in thinking that they're seeing a client. And when we think about African American men, and just generationally how they've been treated as subjects or how they've been treated in situations where it's either testing or in psychology, there could be this resistance. What we need to do is find a way on creating collaborative conversations, listening to the narrative and helping the client to feel valued. And that's a lot of what we're looking at Henry Health. Also trying to be more culturally responsive and also culturally sensitive to the client. That can help to build alliances, rapport, and maybe have a better connection in the sessions.
Well, and you sparked something else for me to talk about. Like yourself, I actually have a therapist now.
Oh, good.
So just because you're well doesn't mean that you can't get better, right?
Right.
But what I did find as a link to what you said is that for me, I'm from Texas and Louisiana. So a lot of my family history is rooted in slavery and all these other things. So as you said, there is this air of feeling like property or not feeling valued.
Right. Correct.
So a lot of the friends that I have had who were seeking therapy, one of the things that they did say is that I didn't stay with this therapist because I don't think they heard me.
That's so important.
Because it was more like a textbook therapy session.
Exactly.
Tell me your problem. And I've been there too, whereas I'm seeking a therapist, I'm going through, I guess, the litany of sources, and I find that when I leave the session, I didn't feel authenticated.
Right, exactly.
I felt like I was just here to pay my deductible.
And to speak to that, Cory, that's exactly what we're getting at with our training and working with our therapists, is to remove that kind of behavior where it's just more interactive and just going through the actual motions, but actually getting to a place of being responsive. So responsive is an actual action that you have to engage in somebody's narrative.
Absolutely.
You have to be there in real time and understanding what's happening. And so that's the value of what we're working on.
So and so we're talking about Henry Health. So which came first, the app or Henry Health? Was it the app that came first, or?
Like, I would say first of all, I kind of want to back up a bit.
Sure.
And I also want to reframe this conversation a bit broader, because oftentimes when we talk about mental health, the view that society has of mental health are sort of people who need to be institutionalized. And one of my primary goals is to reframe the conversation, that we understand that all of us at any given point in life could be in need of having someone to talk to.
Absolutely.
And so, which is one of the reasons why we talk about unmanaged stress. I like to say that, any of us can be knocked off of our center.
Very true.
And in the company, we call it life events, a divorce, a loss of a loved one, a loss of a job. And what we found, through research and anecdotally through interacting with men, is that often Black men try to negotiate these challenges in life without help.
Absolutely.
So, one of the things that we're really focused on is helping men to understand that it's okay to ask for help.
Exactly.
It's okay that when you have these challenges in life that you pause and talk to someone, or even admit that you need help.
Absolutely.
So that's a really important step. And I kind of want to just help set the stage that is the framing, I think, that culturally we see in the country right now of how we're starting to think about mental health. But that conversation also has to spill over into the African American community, but in particular for African American men.
Yeah.
Very true.
And so what I also understand you saying in this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, and it is a valuable point to make, that just because you may need someone to talk to doesn't always mean that you need therapy.
Exactly.
So it could be also about training in comfort, meaning I may not need a therapist, but at least, as we talked about outside, let me be comfortable to tell myself the truth. So that may not always be a set number of sessions. It's more so saying, when I'm feeling something, when I'm at home with my wife, or I'm home with my kids, or home, or even at work, how do I express myself in a way that's valuable to me?
Right.
Right. And so it sounds like, Cory, what I'm getting is that intrinsic ability to work on self, and then be able to be in shared spaces with your family, your loved ones, and being able to communicate that.
Absolutely.
Share the emotions. And that's exactly what the community that we're trying to create with Henry Health and the app, and creating this ongoing generational impact that allows for men to share, to give themselves in a way that may not have been the norm, and changing that. Yeah.
So I want to go back to kind of a section of the conversation talking about the barriers to mental health
Mhm.
for our community,
Mhm.
and especially for Black men. If there are specifics, if there are specific barriers to mental health treatment for Black men, can you speak to some of those?
Yes, I believe Kevin and I both can speak to a lot of these barriers. And Kevin even mentioned in his own narrative some of those barriers and like seeking the access and ability to get responses from therapists. So the reality is that, generally what we're finding for Black men or for men in general, they have to be at maybe one of the lowest points before they're actually going to seek
Yeah.
therapy. And so even that itself is a barrier. As you mentioned, creating this app is what we want to do is increase treatment seeking behavior, that it doesn't have to be at your lowest point. Maybe you
Absolutely.
can seek sooner. And
Right.
so that even the mentality of that is a barrier. And I think Kevin may be
Right.
able to speak to.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that because I think, it's sort of back to my point about life events. And in that we, as Dr. Spann mentioned, Black men often get to their lowest point. And, I speak from personal experience. It was me sitting on the foot of my bed realizing, okay, this isn't right.
Absolutely.
I've been here in this place for too long and I need help.
Right.
And there were signs early on in my life that things were getting unmanageable. And had I known what I know now, or had the right subliminal messages been sent to me, had I been a part of the community that we're trying to build at Henry Health, I would have known instantly that it was appropriate to get help at that point before I fell to such a low. And so part of, as I think one of the messages I want to drive home is that there is a shifting culture in this country around how we talk about mental health.
Absolutely.
Many insurers are starting to talk about total health, wellness, well-being, mind, body, and spirit.
Right.
And Black men need to be a part of that conversation. And so when we think about the vision and the community that we're trying to build in Henry Health, we pick up on those themes. So, part of our goal is not just that we provide culturally competent care, but we also leverage technology to support men in making better decisions around things like diet, physical activity, setting reasonable goals. All of these things really, if you will, produce, good outcomes in life. And so what we're interested in, and we've mentioned this before, like we have a moonshot, and our moonshot is to increase the life expectancy of Black men by 10 years within the next 25 years. Now, that's an audacious goal, but guess what? We already know enough to improve health outcomes for Black men. It's a matter of how do we build a community that support men in making better decisions on a day-to-day basis, and how do we manage to get them to change their attitude about seeking help?
Well, I do think that one thing that does help to change, and this is just speaking from what I'm hearing you guys say, is the words you use, is the terminology. We go from saying mental health to life events. Life events is an easier term for people to accept.
Because we're all going to have them.
Right.
Listen,
I mean, whether it's a good event
you may
or a bad
lose
event,
a job.
it's an event. Wellness. We're not talking about it in such the stark, heavy, medicated terms. So I think that makes it easier to digest when we're having the conversations with people that are not comfortable talking about it. Coming from a family myself, that we've had mental health issues in a family, but we never addressed them. We just looked at the person and we gave them a label and we understood it, but we didn't do the work. And also what that does is that also didn't spark conversation in the younger people in our family. So for example, now that I know better about myself, I have a different conversation with my sons.
Absolutely.
And the thing I tell them is that you don't need my permission to feel a human emotion. And so when we come back, we'll have more of this conversation, and so stay tuned.
Matthew.
Huh? Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I just need you to listen to me.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me. And believe it or not, they really do make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for talking and preparing me for what's ahead.
Thanks, Mom, for never giving up and always being my biggest fan.
Thank you for letting me know what you expect, so I can try to meet your expectations.
Thank you for talking.
And we're back, and thank you for joining us. And so during the break, we were talking about toxic masculinity. How do you feel that affects the Black male population when it comes to how we perceive our, I guess I'm trying to find the right phrase, how it affects how we actually perceive our emotional standing?
Right. I'd like to address that, and I'd like to hear Dr. Spann's thoughts as well.
Sure.
I think it really points back to even the story of John Henry. There was absolutely no reason for John Henry to be competing against a steam-powered hammer.
Right.
And if you think of this, but that's what it meant to be a strong man in the community he lived in. And all of us have this construct of what it means to be a man that I think is damaging. And so it's really caught up in the ideas of, you know, masculinity and what it means to be a man, because what it means is essentially that we're taught to suppress our emotions, to hold them down. And I think that that's very damaging. I think that it's one of the reasons that we have this sort of unmanaged stress, because we are suppressing our emotions, and we're taught that real men don't cry, which is a lie.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree to that. And just thinking about constructs and how damaging they are, and not allowing for somebody to tap into their feelings. And I think that's the issue that we also have to get to, is that we all feel, you know, we all have these feelings. The unfortunate thing for men sometimes is that they tap into only a few feelings, and that could be anger or that's happiness. And so when it's not managed in the right way, it's coming out, or it's unmanageable and they don't know how to really put it into place.
Absolutely.
So that's where I really would want us to do more as men on working out how to manage through different feelings, as well as thinking about how to share those feelings and actually get to the exact feeling and talk about that and share with not just your therapist, but share with your family, share with your friends, and not to be embarrassed by that. Because if somebody really cares about you, they're not going to judge you about talking about yourself.
Absolutely.
They're going to support you.
Well, that was the whole thing, because you hit home when you said men don't cry. And we teach our boys that boys don't cry. How many times do you hear about a man who says, well, I was taught that I should not come back in the house unless I wanted to fight.
Absolutely.
You know, men don't cry. Suck it up.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
man up.
Those narratives.
But just because you stop crying doesn't mean that the cause of the tears has gone away.
Exactly.
And you can carry that for decades. And that person that you may see as detached or hypersensitive, because it's either a far left or a far right.
Right.
It may just be this accumulation of things that he has not been allowed to express. And so we're going to talk about this perceived notion that sometimes we feel we need to be allowed to have an emotional freedom of expression.
Exactly.
How do you think that we turn the tide on that? Meaning, it's not about seeking permission, but it's about knowing that it's okay to be as expressive as the next person.
Well, I think it's important that the conversation we're having right now is an incredibly important conversation. But, you know, awareness is not enough. The mental health industry needs personalized, accessible treatment, which is, you know, also one of the driving reasons behind Henry Health, is that we recognize that there is a need for culturally competent care. There is a need for accessible care. And so awareness in itself won't solve this problem. We need to make sure that we build a solution that meets men wherever they are, regardless of economic status, regardless of education status. Like, we need to build a solution, and that's our vision, is to build a solution that is agnostic to all of these sort of boxes that we can place men in.
Well, and you hit some, well, oh, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and just thinking about creating equity to access to mental health care. And that's another way of reducing the barriers, as you were mentioning the app and being on your phone or being on a tablet or being at a computer, creating that access to reach individuals. And so when we think about the community and we think about the individual, the Black male himself, we have to think about how to operate in solidarity. That it's not going to just be the one individual, it's not going to just be Henry Health, but this has to be a community effort.
Absolutely.
And so I think what we're speaking to is saying, how do we shift the tide? How do we change some of these things? And that's a lot of where it's going to be operating in solidarity and trying to reduce and break down some of these barriers.
Well, and that's why these conversations are important, because I can talk about it, but to have the people who are part of the driving force behind the change to talk about not just what it means to the community, but also how we can collaborate. Because usually, well, I wouldn't say usually, but sometimes we see things as an island, meaning if you're doing this for this cause, that's just you. I'm going to go over here and do this. But what can be found when we come together is this collective expertise. That can really, that can really springboard off of each other and say, well, what have you been working on? Or what have you researched and found? Because I haven't found that yet. So I really think that that's going to be the catalyst of a broader change, and the conversation must always continue.
Continuous conversation.
And you mentioned something. You said, and which is true. You talked about the social, that these issues do not. Well, I'm phrasing it wrong, but the issues are not dictated by your social status or
no matter where you are in life, life events are going to happen.
But what do you say to that man that believes that as long as I'm making money, as long as I'm taking care of my family, if I get the bigger house, then I should not have any issues?
We've all seen stories of people with incredible resources hit rock bottom.
Absolutely.
So I think the message in that is that money in itself is not this key to a happy life. Happy life comes from a sense of self-awareness, one being in tune with his or her emotions, having a network of people that love him, that supports him. And so, I'd push back that money is this solution to our answers, to our challenges in life.
Yeah, and I think that it also drives to change the definition of what true happiness is.
Absolutely.
True happiness and life joy. Because as you said, there are people with wealth and status who crumble and who are no longer here, but there are people with meager means who are living their best lives.
And as I would, I take it back to our Moonshot, that the average right here in Washington, D.C., the life expectancy, between wards, literally 10 years difference between Black men and white men. And that is appalling. And we can do something about that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to speak on my personal experience, because when I've seen your social media tweets, and you tweet about the 5 stressors of Black men and all that, or the other tweets, and you have a Black man's image attached to it,
powerful.
I'm more apt to looking at that and feeling an attachment, because not that he looks like me, but he probably understands what it is to be me.
The experience.
But then if I see another tweet, let's say by a white counterpart, and I see a white man, I see it and I read the information, but it's not stuck. So I do feel that. So I do feel that for us culturally, that we gravitate towards what we feel will understand us. Meaning, if it's us Black men talking about it, Black men will take heed and say, "Wow, if they could actually freely talk about this without any shame or embarrassment, maybe that's my opportunity to try to become more comfortable."
And that's exactly what we're doing with Henry Health, the platform, and spaces that we're speaking in. We really are trying to create brave spaces and safe spaces. And the ways that we can do that, or we've been doing that, is in our advertisement, in our design, putting back to Black men, putting back to communities, and showing that Black men are in these spaces, they're in these kind of advertisement. And that just creates a healthy sense of understanding and relatability. And that's even just one step on breaking down barriers as well. Seeing yourself in those spaces, seeing your brethren in those spaces. And we realize that's very important at Henry Health. So that's what we've been communicating back to the community.
So, and, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying absolutely.
So with the app, what what can a user expect in terms of the user experience, in terms of the resources that they may find available in the app?
So first of all, I think it's really important to see the company in two dimensions. So when we, in a short way that we describe ourselves, we say that we are an app that provides self-care support and culturally sensitive teletherapy. And self-care support is this idea that we're leveraging technology to support men in making better day-to-day decisions about their life. Meaning, how can I eat better? Should I walk as opposed to taking the car? Like that, we're literally reminding men of small, simple, conscious decisions they can make that will ultimately help improve their health outcomes. But then on the other side, we recognize that culturally competent therapy is a need, but the average person is only in therapy for about 6 months. And so as people transition in and out of therapy through different life events, they can, our hope is that they'll have a continuous relationship with Henry, that will be there, a trusted part of their life, helping them navigate all the different courses and phases of life.
Oh, that sounds awesome. So the app is still in its pilot phase, right?
Absolutely, right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and so in our pilot phase, we really are thinking about how to create this journey and how to create a space that allows for the user to engage in a way that, one, reduces and or prevents some of these diseases and or actions that are preventable. If you think about it, some of the things that we go through, if we didn't wait till the last moment to actually go to the dentist, to actually see a therapist, to see the doctor, some of these things can be preventable. As Kevin was saying, if somebody decided to walk instead of take the car, really our app is going to be designed around that, having that space for the actual client or the user to get that experience, as well as bringing in the mental health side, where our therapists will be giving them access and equity through culturally competent care. And it gives that wheelhouse where they're both coming together.
So is there a specific launch date set for the app, or are you still working out?
I'm afraid to say, but we are working with our development team rather, and hopefully it'll be really soon. But if men are interested in therapy in itself right now, we're ready to serve them.
Exactly.
And so they'll be able to go to the website and find out more about those services as well, as well as Henry Health, and also some things about the app that's upcoming as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So our web address is henry-health.com. Not only can men enroll in our pilot if they live in Maryland, Washington, D.C., or Virginia, but we're also building a resource of tools to support men in making better self-care decisions as well.
I'd like to thank you guys for joining me today and for talking about this very important topic. But I want to go back to this mention of Moonshot. So if no one knows what that is, again, I would like you to take a moment and explain that again.
Thank you. We're a part of an accelerator called Startup Health, and Startup Health asks all of their companies that are part of their portfolio to set a moonshot, an audacious goal akin to going to the moon, as we did as a country. And our moonshot is to increase the life expectancy of Black men by 10 years within the next 25 years. And that's not only a challenge for us, Cory, but that's a challenge that we're extending to you. We're asking other organizations to join in that work with us, because it's a goal that we think that is worthy to be met.
Well, I accept the challenge, and through this show, we hope to funnel these conversations, not just through you guys, but through the other guests that I do plan to have. And so to find out more about Henry Health and the Henry app, please visit www.henry-health.com or go to oneononewithcory.com/resources. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up to date on new episodes, behind the scenes footage, and to watch previously aired episodes. And as always, take care of yourself as you hope others would, and be just as great to someone else. Until next time, God bless.